European leaders in the United States are considering sanctions against the Ukraine after last night's violent crackdown against protesters in the capital, Kiev, which left at least 26 people dead. But Ukraine's president has denounced the protests as a coup, sending paratroopers to Kiev to defend government buildings. And the state security forces said they were launching an anti-terrorist operation across the country to restore order. Well, our Europe editor Matt Fry is in Kiev. Matt, what's the latest?
Well, Kathy, this is my third trip to Kiev in the last 3 months, and I have to say every time I'm here it gets a lot worse. And the last 2 days, of course, have been the most violent in this country's history since independence. At least 26 dead, including protesters and policemen. So the stakes really couldn't be higher. The international community is almost panicking. But I'll tell you this, Kathy, if the president of this country thought that he could cow the protesters with his violent crackdown last night, he couldn't be more wrong, as I discovered. And I warn you, there are some disturbing images in my piece.
Independence Square is a busy place today, humming with the solemn industry of an anthill. The violence last night has done nothing to dent the work ethic of this revolution. Irma and Helen, one a librarian, the other a chemist, are helping to prepare the ammunition for the next round. Last night, the trades union building, which had served as the headquarters of the revolution, was burnt down. Today, the wreck and its contents were already being recycled as building materials for the new set of barricades. Everything and anything will do, even a hairdresser's chair. Meanwhile, a poet with a keen eye on a career opportunity mounts the barricades to recite his latest ballad. But if all this looks like an epic set for a revolutionary nostalgia film, don't be fooled. On the other side of the wall of smoke, the riot police don't much care for poetry. Kiev has been mainly quiet today, licking its wounds, but the unrest is spreading across the nation. This was Khmelnytsky in western Ukraine. Demonstrators venting their rage on a government building. Suddenly there's automatic gunfire. A protester is shot, apparently in the head. We have no idea if the woman survived or who was shooting, but it's become increasingly obvious that the unrest is getting more chaotic and that violence is being used by both sides, and that includes live ammunition for the first time in this crisis. Last night in Kiev, the police finally used armoured vehicles to ram the barricades. The riot police emerged singed and bedraggled from the burnt-out wreckage. They too have suffered casualties, but not nearly as many as the protesters. In Lviv, in western Ukraine, always a hotbed of anti-Russian and anti-government sentiment, protesters have gone one step further and even declared their independence. Here, soldiers took off their armoured gear, surrendered their barracks, and allowed themselves to be frisked by protesters. To add insult to injury, they then set fire to the barracks. One part of the army giving up to be cheered on by the revolution. Another first in this crisis. With his country and his authority disintegrating around him, President Yanukovych went on primetime television to denounce the protesters as terrorists and to accuse the opposition leaders of attempting to stage a coup. Back at the heart of this very fluid revolution, the air is choking with intrigue and questions. The front line here on Independence Square, right in the center of Kiev, has never looked this chaotic and messy. And the real question, especially after all the deaths last night, is whether this could now actually become a civil war. So much in this country is divided, and that includes the Orthodox Church. The bells of St. Michael's Cathedral, one of Ukraine's most beautiful and important, are frantic in their support of the revolution. The church itself has been transformed. Outside, there's a bazaar of medicines shipped in bulk by an army of volunteers. And inside, we found this. This is the Westminster Abbey of the Ukraine, St. Michael's Cathedral in Kiev, now a field hospital for the revolution. Think church turned ER. The floor has become one giant hospital bed. The doctors and nurses are getting ready for the battles of the night ahead. And there's no shortage of volunteers. Irina has come from eastern Ukraine, traditionally an area that supports the president.
Our government looks like a rat.
Like a rat.
A rat. When it is cornered, it starts to bite. But it is a rat. And we are nation. And I adore our nation. And I'm very proud, namely now, that all people here outdoors in every city, they are standing for our freedom.
Outside, Independence Square burns once again. The stakes never higher, the outcome never clearer. The world never more worried that what happens in Kiev will not stay in Kiev.
Well, while the air here in Kiev has been thick with acrid smoke from burning tires and tear gas, the diplomatic air around the world has been equally congested. President Obama, just in the last few minutes, has strongly condemned the violence here and has said that there would be consequences if the president, at least, didn't try to restrain the riot police. In Europe, they've been actually discussing, plotting consequences. In Berlin and in Paris, they've been talking about targeted sanctions against Ukrainian political leaders. Elsewhere in Europe, there's been widespread condemnation of everything that's going on here. But I don't know if you can hear the stun grenades behind me. But the point is this. Even if there were sanctions imposed tomorrow, it is not certain whether that would actually force the government's hand. The only two people who can stop this crisis at the moment are President Yanukovych, if he decides to step down, which he doesn't look as if he's going to do anytime soon, and indeed his principal backer, President Vladimir Putin of Russia, who, through back channels, seems to have encouraged him to stand strong. As long as those two men stick with their position, I don't think this crisis is going to go away, because the least likely thing to happen is that the demonstrators in the square behind me, who you saw in my piece, are going to go home and continue with life as normal. Back to you.
Matt Fry, live in Kiev.